Thank you, Patel sir, for this opportunity. And um, the last session, how many of you remember what we did in the last session? Any idea what we did in the last session? Types of styles or styles of types. Okay, before I do that, are you able to see the slides? Is the slide available? Is the slide visible to you?
No, no,
No. Okay,
no.
so this has been a problem. So I am already presenting. So let me stop presenting and do it one more time. So while I toggle with these technical challenges, what did you do about what we learned yesterday? I mean, yesterday, last Saturday. Is the slide up now?
It will come. It should come. Yes, it is coming.
It is coming. Very nice. So Ahmedabad to Baroda, the toll tax takes time. Has it come?
Yeah, the only sentence is personal styles at work. Now, yeah, it's the full
Correct,
slide.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. Very nice, very nice. So before I go there, let me quickly check the chat box. I think so I'm able to toggle between the various screens now. I have learned that much. Okay, so what was the learning, right? So our style should not become our types, right? So that is what Pandya Saab is saying. Very nice. And Parispa, did I get the name right? Name right? I'm not sure. In case I pronounced it incorrectly, please forgive me. So what did you do with what you learned last time? Tried recognizing the social styles of your family members. Very nice. What about you? Where would you be? You would be expressive. I agree. I agree with you. You would be expressive. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is I'm also I was proposing to Patel sir, and let me put it to everyone that for those who are regular on these calls, let us form a small WhatsApp group only limited to people who are on calls on a regular basis, not someone who comes, once in a while and then goes away. But not like the politician who comes only once in 5 years to promise something and then never show his or her face again, but someone who is like a frontline warrior, comes and does work every day. So let's we can create a small WhatsApp group. The purpose would be for me to share some slides, some information for the benefit of everyone, so that the connect becomes that much more strong, right? Okay, chalo, let's so that was a proposal. So I have to send to you the questionnaire that will help you identify where you stand, right? So right now, most of you, I'm sure, would have tried to understand that where you are and where your friends and family are. So that would be more on a perception basis. Well, we should never have perception management as a way of working. We should be more objective and more data oriented rather than being subjective and only qualitative. We need to balance both quantitative and qualitative aspects. So I'm going to share that questionnaire with all of you. For those who are interested, you can drop me a line on either my email or WhatsApp. I will share it with you. Right. So what we did last time was understand social styles and why understanding social styles is important. And the four social styles that we saw were driver, expressive, analytical, and amiable. And it depends upon the degree of assertiveness that I have. And what was the second degree? One was assertiveness, and what was the other one? Let me go back to my chat window. Responsiveness. That's right, right? So very good. So that was the two vectors, if I may use that word, that we understood, and we saw some of the characteristics of each of those four, and what are the benefits of having driver as a primary style, expressive as a primary style, analytical as a primary style, and amiable as a primary style. And we started our journey at about 30,000, 35,000 feet, and we said we would want to come down from an aeroplane into a helicopter. Helicopter flies at about 10,000 feet, and then hopefully we will land and understand this from a very practical, pragmatic point of view, right? So we saw that, and we also saw various styles at work, right? And what is that we saw? We saw some things in terms of um, what are their personal styles at work. We saw how do they talk. We saw various elements like the tone of speech. I think so. We ended at the pace of speech, if I'm not mistaken. I think so. This was the last slide. Did we end here? Let me
Oh,
just.
you'll have to present again. Maybe you'll have to present again.
Okay, I'll have to present again. I don't mind presenting again.
Yes.
It has come. Okay, very nice.
Yeah.
So my question is, did we stop at this slide? Prakriti says yes. So thank you for that. And so let's move on. Let's continue understanding this in greater detail, right? And let's talk about one aspect which I personally am very attracted to is body language, because in communication, this is the most important element. About 55% of communication happens through body language. 38% of the communication happens through our tonality, and the balance, about 7%, is the words that we speak. So friends, it's not what you speak, it is how you speak which is more important than the content. So the content and the intent both matter. So let's continue this, and if you're making notes, keep on making notes. So if you look at a driver will be, because of the qualities that we saw on the previous slides. Last Saturday we saw how a driver is. So that person will be leaning forward, because he's like the word is suggesting, is more driving. He wants to be in control, or she wants to be in control. So they will be leaning forward, right? And we also saw the element between task orientation and people orientation, and we will reach to that point uh, in the session today. Both driver and expressive will be leaning forward, and analytical and amiable would be leaning backwards, right? So they would be more like playing the pillion road, not driving the vehicle, right? So it's playing the second fiddle, not in charge of what they do. That doesn't mean that they are not involved. So don't misunderstand that that person is not involved, because typically when you say I'm leaning back as a body language, it gives a negative connotation. So we're not talking about that. It is just that style. It is just the person that he or she is, and that is why they bring that body language, right? So the driver will have limited or no facial expressions, whereas an amiable person is more of a person who will have a smile and a giggle on his or her face, right? So will not be kind of smiling end to end, right, showing that Colgate smile, but will have a slight of a giggle, a small smile, as they say, on his or her face. An expressive person will have more controlled expression, and an analytical person is like typical your finance manager if you are working, or your accountant if you are working, or your principal if you are in school or college, right? They at least my principal in school and college, I never saw them smile also. they would have no expressions, like the professor in Three Idiots, right? So that professor in Three Idiots, he had no expressions on his face whatsoever, except for the time that he was reprimanding the, what is his name, whatever was his name, when he was giving a session in the class, right? So from limited expressions to some facial expressions, and the degree of facial expressions will change from the four styles, right? And driver will have more deliberate movements, and expressive will be a person like me who moves his hand or her hands a lot. So there are a lot of gestures along with the communication, right? So sometimes it becomes exaggerated, but that's what that person is. Expressive is more of a storyteller. So when you look at a storyteller, he or she will be more expressive, and using a lot of gestures, especially hand movements, and the facial muscles will keep on changing. And so that's what tells that he or she is a storyteller. And analytical will be like limited gestures. Does They are unruffled, nothing happens to them. I don't know what they do inside of them, because I am definitely not analytical. I am, maybe the least that I am is analytical. So sometimes I don't understand some people, especially when we do sessions for some of our technical team. I have done a few sessions for our finance team, our procurement team. Oh man, when you look at them, it's just like a stern face, and this, okay, listening, okay, go on, finish. Right? So it's like a conversation that happens on a walkie-talkie, right? It's over and out types, right? And that is how they are. Let's dive deep into the communication style, and this, I think so, should get interesting, right? A driver will be direct and to the point. And many of you, especially the young boys and girls on the call, most of you would be direct in your communication style. And because you are having a very direct style of communication, you talk to the point, many people around you, your family, your friends, your parents, would think that at times you are rude. And the point is, you are not rude, it is just that you are direct to the point. And maybe we will start a series on communication styles, and I've done this for some of you, where we talk about the various communication styles. So if you look at us as Indians, typically us as Indians, we are not direct to the point. For us it is emotion first and then task second, right? Whereas if you look at the Western world, and the Germans are there at the top of that ladder, they are the most direct people in terms of communication. For them, it is quick, short, to the point, and out. But for us, when we talk about whatever we are talking about, it is more of building the context, building the relationship, and then coming to the point. And most of the current generation, the young boys and girls, because of their exposure to the Western world, they are very direct to the point, right? And so for those who have children, or for those who are on the call, understand, if you're a school teacher, if you're a parent, what the children are talking about is a different communication style than me and you. So don't treat them as people who are rude and arrogant. It is just the style of communication. So once you understand that, you will appreciate their style more, and you will not criticize and condemn them, right? And expressive, as you would have judged by now, they are very animated. They get excited very fast, right? So they'll have a lot of gestures, a lot of hand movements, and very animated in the way they talk. And you can see their emotions on their face, right? Uh, and some of them are like analytical. They will have absolutely contradicting facial expressions as compared to an expressive, very specific, no nothing, right? And like I said last time, analytical person is a person who will proofread a photocopy. And I don't understand why should you proofread a photocopy, but that's the way those people are. And amiable people will be more in a dreamy thoughts, because for them it is how can I help the other person, right? Driver can be outspoken, right? Understand, again, outspoken is not being rude, is not being arrogant. It's just that he or she is outspoken. If you look at from the current set of cricketers, and if you compare the current set of cricketers with the previous generation, so if you compare, let's say, a Virat Kohli with a Rahul Dravid, so you can't say a Virat Kohli is arrogant or does not care about others. Now if you take this context, if you take this learning, and if you look at it from this lens, you will be able to understand that a Virat Kohli will be more of a driver, and a Rahul Dravid or a Sachin Tendulkar will be more of an amiable person. You will look at Mahendra Singh Dhoni as more analytical person, and you will look at Harbhajan Singh as a very expressive person, right? So just to give you familiar names so that you can put them in that, so that you understand this slightly better. So one of the things that I hope after this session is you don't presume that someone is arrogant or is outspoken. So that outspoken is just a communication style. So don't link it with personality. Yeah, so that's the point that I'm trying to drive, and I've heard it so many times, and even I have made this mistake so many times of saying that a Virat Kohli is a very arrogant person. But as you learn, as you grow, as you build your knowledge, as you go in deep, in depth of what your understanding is, suddenly you say, oh, hold on, maybe I was wrong. I was quick to judge someone. Why we should never ever judge anyone, right? So that person is more outspoken, the other person may not be outspoken, right? So an expressive person can come on too strong, because he will not or she will not allow the other person to speak. Like I have said this many times, some of you have heard this speaking, that I work for a company called AT&T. What is AT&T? Always talking and talking, because that's how expressive people are. So imagine me and Prakriti having a conversation together, and if, let's say, someone who is an analytical person like Chinmay, I think so, is an analytical person. So the three of us, let's say I, Prakriti, and Chinmay are talking. So Chinmay will wonder what's wrong with them, from which planet have they come, because this is diagonally opposite, right? And just think about this, right? So if there were two expressive people coming together to form a company, what will happen? It will become a circus show. If two analytical people come to form a company, they will only be doing meetings. If two drivers come together to form a company, they will keep on changing companies as you change clothes. If two amiable people come and form a company, the company is not going to do anything, right? Hence you need a blend of people to come together to make the job done. Hence we complement each other. Hence it is important that we get into complementary relationships, and so that I complete the other person and the other person completes me. And that's how the word team has come up. And team as an acronym, expressive will be more informal and casual, right? So even their dressing will be like that. So if you look at a Steve Jobs making a presentation versus if you look at any other business leader making a presentation, you will see a Steve Jobs, he was an expressive person. His stage presence was very different as compared to a driver, right? And if you, in the current business context, if you look at let's say a Kumara Mangalam Birla making a presentation versus, let's say, if you look at a Rajiv Bajaj making a presentation, you look at a Mukesh Ambani making a presentation versus you look at Ratan Tata making a presentation, And if you now look at them on YouTube, you will understand why they are communicating in the way they are communicating, because of the communication styles they have, the social styles that they have. That is their preferred style, right? And as I said last time, there is no one best style. Let's look at responsiveness. A driver may appear to be very pushy because they are wanting results, they are driving results. So you may feel that person is pushing you. So don't presume that the other person is very arrogant. No, he is or she is not arrogant. They are just showing the trait of driver as a social style, and they'll push you, and they will talk only numbers. And that is very, very important, right? And expressive will be more open and more warmth, and have a lot of warmth in both the body language as well as the words that he or she speaks, right? And you will have an analytical person who will appear to be very unresponsive. Understand, that is the response, which is unresponsive. That is not that the other person is unresponsive, right? Understand, if someone is not giving you the response the way you are expecting him or her to give you the response, don't judge that person, right? I hope at the end of this session, at least one thing I'm able to drive home is none of us will judge anyone, but try to understand, evaluate. Okay, if he or she is behaving the way he or she is, what would be their preferred style, what would be their preferred social style, right? And diagonally, an expressive and analytical person will find it difficult to get along. So would a driver and amiable person be, right? So let us not judge a book by its cover, right? And an amiable person will be very friendly, right? A driver will be more reserved and cautious, and an expressive person, as we said earlier, will be more animated, enthusiastic, bubbling and jumping around, and all of those traits that come with the style of expressiveness. And analytical, as you would have guessed, would be reserved and cautious. Yeah, so they will measure each word that they speak. Before a word comes out of their mouth, they would have analyzed that word in their mind for the correctness, for what they are speaking, and they will have checked whether they have data to support it or not. And our friend who is an expressive person, he will go on and on and on and on, right? And that's the way they are. And an amiable person will be more responsive, because amiable is high on responsiveness, and analytical person is low on responsiveness. We saw that in that slide last Saturday, right? A driver, because they are into multiple things, right? They are not just driving one agenda, they are driving multiple agendas, and they can appear to be preoccupied, right? So you need to check with them before you start speaking. Imagine an expressive person talking to a driver. An expressive person will keep on talking, 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 and talking. And at the end of that conversation, the driver said, okay, go and do this now. So this expressive person would have, poured his or her heart out in that conversation. And what he or she gets in response will be one word. Okay, good. Now go and do this. So the expressive person will feel, wasn't that too dry a response? But it's not too dry a response that he or she is giving you. It's just the style that that person is operating from, right? And it would even be worse when an expressive person is talking to an analytical person. An analytical person will be, looking at his or her face and would be wondering inside, ये इतना बोलता क्यों है? Why is she talking so much? Right? And why can't he or she come to the point, right? So that is what it is. And doing this in a classroom, where we, after the activity, we divide the group or the class into these four different types, and then make them talk to each other. It is just an amazing scene to experience. Maybe we will have the opportunity to do face-to-face sessions sometime soon. Yeah, just a second, give me a minute. And then if you talk about amiable, amiable will be a person who enjoys the conversation, right? So look at yourself. When you look at all the various aspects that I has talked about, spoken about, where do you fit? Do you fit in the driver explanations, descriptors, or are you in the expressive or the analytical or the amiable part? I have a small little kid on my lap, so pardon me of for the small sweet voices that you will keep on hearing. Right, anyways, right, so let's understand the listening pattern. What are the listening patterns? The listening pattern, as you can guess, of a driver will be a poor listener, because he or she is more task oriented, more okay, do this, do this, do this, do this, right? Because he or she wants to be in control, they will be talking more and listening less. That is how they are. And they would interrupt, right? So if I were to change the wording on the slide, I would say not may interrupt, I would say will interrupt. Yeah, and would summarize what he or she has spoken about. And whereas if you look at a expressive person, the expressive person will be more listening, right? And if you look at listening, you will have expressive, a better listener as compared to a driver. And the best of them would be an amiable person, because an amiable person is high on responsiveness, right? And he will be doing, or she will be doing, what Stephen Covey says: listen first to understand before you want to be understood, right? And listen to understand, listen not to reply, right? And seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. And listens but they appear as they are not, is what analytical people are. So they would be not having the typical eye contact which we recommend to have as far as the listening skills are concerned, but they would be making notes, maybe mental notes or notes on a piece of paper or on a phone, right? And an expressive person will go along with you. They will react to what you are saying, right? So if you are expressing yourself and showing a lot of emotions of joy, they will reciprocate that emotion of joy. And if you're sharing something which has brought some sadness to your heart, and you can see on their face that they will reciprocate the same kind of emotions, right? This is pretty interesting in terms of listening styles, right? And yes, in terms of listening, many of us, when we are preoccupied, when we have a few things on our head, we can be a driver, because we would want to complete the 4, 5, 6, 10 items on our plate. And when you are in a more relaxed state of mind, me and you would become better in terms of listening, because you do not have much to control, right? So that's how the pattern of listening is there. Let's look at the work style. In terms of driver, they work on priority, right? And you will always see them in quadrant one. If you remember the 4 quadrants that I shared with you in terms of time management, in terms of planning, we saw that time can be divided into 2 parts, into 2 segments, into 2 categories: tasks that are important and tasks which are urgent. And quadrant one are a set of tasks which are both urgent and important, high on importance and high on urgency. So it's a quadrant of crisis, if you remember what I shared with you some time back. And a driver will generally be more on quadrant one, because it's more project execution mode. You go from one project to the other project, and then you're constantly in motion. That is what a driver is, right? And an expressive person is more unstructured. But don't again, this is what we need to learn, that we will not judge a person by his or her style. When you look at someone who is unstructured, don't think that that person is not responsible, right? I have heard this so many times, especially at homes and families. When you look at someone who is not very structured in the way he or she keeps his or her things, that doesn't mean that they are irresponsible. It's just that the style that they have is expressive, and they like freedom, and they are generally very unstructured. So if you're a manager who is managing a person who is expressive, let's say if you are my manager and I am your employee, and if you start micromanaging me, you would lose me, and I would not stay in the company more than 6 months. So I would have resigned in my mind much before I resign in the system. So a driver will make a mistake of micromanaging, and you don't micromanage. You may micromanage an analytical person, even that you should not. But if you want to do it, that is okay. But don't micromanage an expressive person, because he or she likes the freedom, also called autonomy, right? So give him or her a task, and leave the rest to him or her, and they will get the job done. And amiable people, like the character they have, the characteristic that they have, are easygoing and are very cooperative, right? And someone who is very cooperative, again, don't take or don't abuse that relationship, right? So don't it's like, if someone is cooperating with you, don't get into a state of mind where you would want to extract it's basically getting him to do everything. Yes, he is cooperating. Yes, she is cooperating, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to dump everything on his or her head, right? And these are mistakes that we do, and we do this inadvertently. We are not doing it deliberately, right? So those are few things that I need to understand. Someone who is easygoing, someone who is cooperative, please maintain that relationship. Don't get into a state where you start exploiting him or her, and that is not the right thing to do. Let's look at some more. As I said earlier, a driver will be doing multiple things at once, is not just doing one thing, but he or she will be having his neck or her neck deep into various activities. So he'll be or she'll be doing 10 things, and each of those 10 things, they will be neck deep, right? And hence they will be poor listeners, hence they cannot complete everything they start. Hence, if you remember what we discussed last Saturday, they focus more on the what. So they will keep on changing projects, they'll keep on changing assignments, they'll keep on changing few things. So the challenge, if you are managing a person who's a driver, let's say if I'm a driver and you are my manager, so you will have to flex your managerial styles to manage me. You'll have to help me focus upon one critical thing rather than on 10 insignificant things, because I draw energy from doing multiple things. That is what the characteristic of a driver is. And you will have to flex your style in order that you manage me in a effective manner, right? And expressive will be a person who has a lot of people interaction. So if you take an expressive person out of a people environment and put him or her into a control room where the interaction is more with machines, with panels, with systems rather than people, what will happen? He or she will feel very frustrated, and the productivity will come down, so will the performance come down, and eventually it does not help neither the person nor the organization, and definitely does not help the manager, right? So you need to understand that, right? So the right person at the right job, at the right place, at the right time, is so very critical to get the job done. Otherwise they become a misfit. It's like, trying to put a square peg, or what do you call it, a round peg in a square hole, what is that term, I forgot, right? You are trying to force in a square into a round hole, something like that. So it's basically a misfit, does not help. An analytical person is, let's say if you're making a presentation to an analytical person, think about this. You are in sales, you are in marketing, you are into a people role, and you are making a presentation to a team which is having more analytical people. And imagine an expressive making a presentation to analytical people. The analytical people will say, okay, all that is fine, but what do you want? What is the proposal? Come to the point. So for those who are on this call, who are in an employee facing role, for those who are in HR, those who are in sales, those who are in a job that requires them to make presentations, please remember, making presentation has to do a lot with psychology. You need to understand how people are, who they are, and you need to be able to have that ability to scan your audience, scan the people who are there sitting in the audience, and then who the stakeholders are, and try to understand, would that person be a driver, expressive, analytical, or amiable person, and then flex your delivery style accordingly. So very, very important, right? Otherwise, what you said would have made a lot of sense to you, but you don't get the job done. And if you don't get the job done, your boss is not going to get too impressed by what you have done, right? So that is important. Let's look at some more style. As far as work is concerned, a driver will be more.
Maybe you'll have to present again.
Okay, I will present again. I don't mind. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So I'm not looking at the what do you call the chat box right now. So please excuse me if I'm not taking questions, because I just have the screen in front of me. I will look at the chat box later. Last time I was able to toggle between the two, but somehow my system, as I said, is 1942 love story, and love stories teach you what. Forget about it. Let me not
Yeah.
get into that, right? So anyway, so please keep your
The
chat box
screen,
going. Please
the
get.
screen, the screen is not seen. The screen is not seen.
The screen is not seen. Okay, let me do it
Sir,
one more
I,
time.
I I can see it. I think if you just pin Anand, you'll be able to see the screen.
Now we are
Don't
able to.
pin, don't pin me. It will hurt me.
That is not fun.
Just joking, just joking. So what was this? My response to Prakriti was a driver, expressive, amiable, analytical. Quick one. You can unmute
Express.
and say expressive. Okay.
Expressive.
Okay, an expressive person would say, "Ouch, it hurts."
Amiable, maybe.
Maybe it would be more of an amiable person, because the tone. Remember, you noticed my tone. I just wanted to ensure that the speaker, the sender of that message, does not feel offended. Right. So it would be more amiable, less of expressive. And when we do this session in a classroom, I can take the effectiveness of the session to a very different level, because we have scenarios, and we practice those scenarios, and it is just a lot of fun. But anyways, we'll have to do with what we have. Yeah. So an expressive person, and an expressive person talking. So Prakriti is an expressive person. So if I would have responded as an expressive person, some of you would have left the call, because I would have explained how it would have pinched. Yeah. So they talk a lot. Anyways, coming back to this point, thank you for bringing that point up, and I hope you are able to see the screen. Now my screen has gone. Wow, very good. It has come back. Okay, good. So are you on the screen that says work styles? You can
Yes,
unmute and
yes.
yeah, good. Thank you. Just digressing for 10 seconds. What are the three most important sentences spoken in the last 60, 70 days of lockdown? The most important two or three sentences spoken in the last 70 odd days are: Am I audible? Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Because everyone is talking on a system, or rather to a system, and you every time you start a Microsoft Teams call or a Zoom call or this call or that call, we will say, आप मुझे सुन पा रहे हो, आपको slide दिख रही है, and imagine these people going back to normal days, and even in a classroom they will say, are you able to hear me? Right? Anyway, that was a horrible joke. That was a PJ. Okay, great. Okay, coming back, an expressive person will have a list of people to call and places to go. Right. So, pardon me for the typo error. It has to be and there. Right. So, a list of people to call. Right. So, if you look at a call list, if you take my phone and look at my call list, yeah, versus if you go and take the phone of someone who's an analytical person will have a call duration of, let's say, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. An expressive person will have a call duration of maybe 50 seconds, maybe 100 seconds. Right? And analytical person will think, ये कितना बोलता है यार, कितने बातें करते हो आप लोग. Right? Why can't you just say what you have said? And I'm sure you would have known people who would give a report to their friends of everything that has happened from start to finish. And I would have told that person sometime, यार इसको रिकॉर्ड कर लो और रिकॉर्ड करके इसको प्ले कर लो, एक सेम सीक्वेंस में आप स्टोरी सुना रहे हो. I'm sure all of you would have also come across those kind of people, but they are just expressive. And if you're finding that slightly irritating, just understand you're analytical. And analytical and expressive are diagonally opposite, and you will have to make some adjustments, because that is the style that that person has, right? An amiable person will be a person who goes with the flow. You say ऐसा करेंगे, वो बोलेगा हाँ चल जी ऐसा करेंगे. You will say ऐसा करेंगे, they will say हाँ जी ऐसा करेंगे. Right? So they are people who are going with the flow, not necessarily expressing themselves. I'm sure you would have gone out with your friends to have dinner, or go to a restaurant to have some snacks or whatever it is, and you ask someone, for example, you ask me, Anand, what would you want to have? I'll say, जो मंगाना मंगा लो, जो आप मंगाओगे ठीक है मेरे लिए. And you'll say, okay, tell me your choice. And that person will say, नहीं सब कुछ चलेगा, मुझे सब अच्छा लगता है. Right? And don't think that person is not able to express himself or herself. It is just that the person has an amiable social style. He or she will go with the flow. आप पानी पूरी मंगाओगे तो उसमें भी वो खुश हो जाएगा, छोले पूरी मंगाओगे तो उसमें भी वो खुश हो जाएगा. Right? So that is how they are. And an analytical person will be concentrating on one thing at a time. Have you noticed, especially in family, I'm sure you would have noticed that there are people in a family, and even in our places of work, where someone, if he or she is talking on the phone, and if you talk to him or her while they're talking on the phone, they really get distracted. They'll say, just shut up, let me finish what I'm talking. So they are not able to process two things in their mind. Right? And they will want you to mute the volume on your television or whatever you're doing. They'll say, I need silence because I'm on the phone. They are just demonstrating a trait of an analytical social style, because they can concentrate on one thing at a time, which is actually a good thing to do, because you cannot multitask. In terms of work area, a driver will be, as we saw earlier, will be working more in a priority order. He or she has a to-do list, and his or her motivation is to complete the to-do list, right? And they are more organized and they are more functional, so that their discussion will be more work related. Right? Their discussion will be more task related and less people related, whereas an expressive person will be by now how he or she will be very interesting, will be talking a lot, and forget about having a priority. They'll do anything and everything, right? And if you open the wardrobe of a driver versus an expressive person, an expressive person's wardrobe, when you open his or her wardrobe, the minute you open it, everything comes dum 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 down, right? And a driver will be very organized, very systematic. Look at the wardrobe of your father and look at the wardrobe of your mother, and you will understand what I'm trying to tell you. That is all they are. So you may be very expressive in the way you talk, but you may be like a driver when it comes to work area. Similarly, you may be kind of a driver when it comes to work area, and you may be expressive when it comes to your talking, right? So we all have various elements of this, and when we finish this call, I will be sharing a questionnaire with you, and when you do that questionnaire, I'm sure that will take the learning and the experience of this session to a different level, right? And I'll give you an example. Like I was talking, and we had this small little kid. She's not even 1 year, so she just came and popped up into my lap. So what would an analytical person do? An analytical person, because he or she is able to think only in one area, he or she would have gone bonkers, and he or she would have stopped talking and said that, hold on, I need to complete something. So they would have made all of you hold on for about 2 or 3 5 minutes, and handed over the child to someone else, and then come and talk. An expressive person will say, okay, bachche ko bhi aane do, it is all fine, right? So they're able to manage multiple things at the same time, right? The good, bad, ugly, I'm not commenting upon that. It is just the style that that person has, right? And some of the things that an analytical person will have is he or she will have lots of papers on his or her table, and they will be taking 1 hour to complete a review of a paper, for which an expressive person will take 10 minutes. And an analytical person is a great person to have on team, because he or she is very detail oriented. They have an eye for detail. An expressive person, uh, they do not have an eye for detail. Like I do not have an eye for detail. I'm more in that flow, let it be done. But an analytical person will ensure that they read even the footnotes, right? For example, I'm not sure how many of you, but your parents definitely would, and some of you may have taken a home loan, or you would have seen someone taking home loan. So when you have taken a loan, whether it is a home loan or whatever vehicle loan, have you ever read the fine print? The person who comes from the bank or the lenders organization, they'll say, "Saab, idhar sign karo, idhar sign karo, idhar sign karo, idhar sign karo." And what we do, okay, ho gaya, khatam karo, jaldi karo, turn the page, and you would have seen the person. If I am that person, I will help you turn the page, the flip the pages, and you're just signing. But did you even read what you're signing on? And it's a legal document. What will an analytical person do? An analytical person will say, hold on, take this tomorrow, right? So he or she will sit and read the fine print before they sign that paper, and they would have underlined a few points that they will ask you to explain when you meet them, right? It is just their style of working, so that decision making is slightly slower. They want to be sure before they commit, and once they commit, they are on it, right? So some more points. Analytical person is more methodological. He has or she has a method that they follow. They are not random, they are not ad hoc. So very methodical in terms of their approach, and they would be very steady, that when it comes to work. Whereas an expressive person will get bored very easily. They'll say, okay, ye khatam ho gaya, ab aur kya kare. So they would want to move from one thing to the other thing, to the other thing, to the other thing. So that's how they are jumping from one point to the other point, which is also what a driver does. But his or her speed will be like a whirlwind. They will be more fast in what they are doing. And an amiable person will be like, okay, there's no need to hurry. They lack that sense of urgency, and they don't like too much of pressure. right? And some of you may have friends or people in the family or in your work area where they'll say, okay, you have given me one work, let me finish that one work before you give me something else, right? So they do not like pressure. They like to do things at their own pace. So as a manager, if you are a manager today, and if not, you will become a manager tomorrow, make sure you do not have the same yardstick to measure everyone's performance. You cannot deal with everyone in the same manner. People are different. People are wired very differently, and we need to be able to flex our style to meet their type. I'll repeat what I said. We will have to flex our style to match with their type, right? And that is what makes the relationships very interesting and intriguing at the same time, right? So, hence, most people don't have good, harmonious relationships. Most people suffer in relationships, whether it is personal relationship or it is professional relationship, right? So, talking in terms of fears, and an expressive person has a fear of rejection because they speak with a lot of emotion, with a lot of expectations, and when things don't happen as they thought should happen, they can feel rejected and dejected very soon, right? And an analytical person fears being criticized because he or she has taken a lot of effort, a lot of pain in arriving at the decision that he or she has taken. So when that does not get acknowledged, that really hurts that particular person, right? And loss of control is a fear of a person who has driver as his dominant style because they like control, right? And amiable people uh, fear being alone because they are people driven. Their responsiveness is pretty high, right? And under stress, um, an amiable person will break down, right? And whereas a driver, I think so, will be energized, will thrive under pressure, right? And whereas an expressive person will kind of rise to the challenge, but also can get stressed because stress means that a bit of your freedom will be taken away from you, and they do not like that, right? And an analytical person will get paralysis of analysis, right? So they will get into too much of detail and may have withdrawal symptoms and may get disengaged in the work that they're doing, or disengaged in the relationship, right? And in under extreme stress, a driver will become autocratic. That means my way or the highway. And an amiable person will kind of surrender and said, okay, I can't do anything. So he or she will become a person whose meekness will become his or her weakness, which is not a good thing to do. And an expressive person will become offensive or sarcastic, right? So we all need to understand how do we react when there is extreme stress. And for those of you who are listening to me, all young boys and girls, please learn how to fade in life. Please learn how to manage stress, because that's a part and parcel of life. Like I was sharing with Patel sir before we started this call that I have been working about 16, 17 hours every day for the last, I don't know how many days. Like yesterday, I finished my work at about 3 o'clock in the morning. Day before yesterday, I finished my work at 5:30 in the morning. The day before that, I finished my work at about 4 o'clock in the morning. And then 8:30, you need to be ready for office again. So this is the stress and the environment that is there. I cannot do anything about it. So I'll need to be able to flex my style. I need to be able to adapt to my situation. Otherwise, you will break down. And when you break down and when you have withdrawal symptoms, it hampers everything. It hampers productivity, it hampers performance, and that's not the right thing to do, right? And as we come to the end of this part. Remember, this is a very long series. We will take maybe 2 or 3 more Saturdays to complete this, right? Let's understand this. Causes of conflict, very important. For this, we will do a conflict management series as well, maybe some other time. So in terms of causes of conflict, let's understand and analyze between priorities and pace. So there are two vectors that we will understand this concept on: priorities and pace. So if you look at the pace and priorities of a driver versus an analytical person, let's look at this. Let me get this. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of priorities, what is the priority and the pace of a driver? If you can write on the chat box. And so the pace of a driver would be high or low in terms of solving problems, solving conflicts. Let me get to the chat box if I can. Yes. Okay, so both will be high is what Kapil Saab says and Prakriti says. Okay, so both will be high. So how do you deal with someone whose pace of handling conflicts and priorities of handling conflicts is both high, and compare and contrast this with someone who is on the extreme opposite, on diagonally opposite? Isn't that a challenge? Yeah, so let's understand this in detail. We may not be able to complete this in today's call because it's already 6:05. We will have to do this. Yeah, but I'm just introducing that concept to you. Let me come back to that slide. Now think of the expressive versus an analytical person. And I hope you will appreciate as we go along that we have these four types of people that we are surrounded with, we work with, we live with, and we have relationships with, and it helps to understand that I'm an expressive person in a relationship with someone who's an analytical person, or I'm a driver in a relationship with an amiable person, and their ways and means to manage conflict will differ, and it differs greatly. It's on two different spectrums. The scope is very different, right? So how do we deal with a driver with whom we are having a relationship, and if I'm an amiable person, how do we manage the conflict, and what is the cause of that conflict, right? The cause of that conflict is my pace is different as compared to his or her pace. The cause of that conflict is my priorities are different as compared to his or her priorities. So one, if I can understand the cause of conflict, number one. Number two, if I can understand the cause of conflict, it will help me and manage those conflicts in a slightly better way, in a more effective manner. We'll talk more about this in the next slide. So what we covered is these two parts, the assertiveness and the responsiveness, and that differentiates the four styles that we have, and also the causes of conflict in terms of pace and priority, right? So if you are a driver, please respect the pace and priorities of an amiable person, and recognize that he or she is different. Similarly, if you're an amiable person, respect and be cognizant of the pace and priorities of a driver. Same thing applies for you if you're an expressive person in a relationship with an analytical person. If we understand this basic, easier said than done, but I'm still saying what I want to say. If we understand this, I think so it will reduce the frictions that are there between people, because the friction between people is more to do with styles and types rather than the person, and we fail to acknowledge and understand the other person, right? So that is what we are going to do, and then in the next session that we will meet next Saturday, we will start with handling conflict. We saw the causes of conflict, but we will also see how to handle conflict, and how do you deal with a driver, how do you deal with an amiable person, how do you deal with an expressive person, and how do you deal with an analytical person, right? So it's about 6:08, and I would want to take a pause here and take some questions that may be there on the chat box. uh, Let me stop presenting for a while. Okay, they let me go from bottom to top. Parispa, if I got the name correctly, in case I got it